Well, American and Iranian officials are set to hold talks in Oman over Tehran's nuclear program and a large American military buildup in the Gulf. Tomorrow's meeting comes just days after Washington shot down an Iranian drone near its aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. So what can we expect from these talks? Let's bring in Simon Mabon, Professor of International Politics at the University of Lancaster. Simon, good to have you back on the show with us. What's the scope of these talks? We understand, of course, that the US wants to include ballistic missiles in addition to Iran's nuclear program and enrichment of uranium. What do you think might be achieved this time round in Oman?
Well, I think, first of all, they need to agree on the scope of the talks. I think we've got a very clear idea of what the US wants with regard to the nuclear program, the ending of any type of enrichment of uranium, the reduction of Iran's ballistic missile program, reducing its links with China, particularly the sale of oil to China, and then a low level of support or the cessation of support for quote unquote proxy groups across the region. But in contrast, Iran is not willing to talk about all of these things. Iran is willing to talk about the nuclear question, of course, but it is not willing to talk about the other factors. So you've got talks happening, but the two parties that are involved in the talks cannot even agree on what the talks are about. So I don't think this is a particularly auspicious start.
So what does that bode then for Iran as far as that huge military buildup is concerned in the Gulf?
Well, it seems to me that there's a clear attempt to put a lot of pressure on the Islamic Republic. We've seen the huge military buildup, as you say. The USS Abraham Lincoln is now in the Gulf. We've seen the drip feeding of news about US military personnel being positioned strategically across the Middle East, across Europe. And this, I think, is just the ratcheting up of pressure. We've heard Donald Trump saying things that this is a particularly dangerous time for Iran and that the pressure is building. And I think it's all about ratcheting up pressure ahead of the talks, trying to get the best type of deal out of these talks. And we know Donald Trump is a businessman. He likes transactional politics. He's banking on this being an opportunity to get the best deal by virtue of essentially having a gun to the head of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But Iran has said repeatedly that it will not back down, that if there is an escalation, it will respond with further escalation. And so that makes these talks incredibly precarious, incredibly delicate, and getting some type of agreement when there is such tense military buildups and political tensions is going to be incredibly difficult.
Yes, I know. And something that was so sensitive was even the location of these talks. They were supposed to be in Istanbul, but Iran insisted they be held in Oman. Why is that the case?
Well, it's not entirely clear, but we know that Oman has got a long track record of mediating between Iran and the United States. We know that the Iranians trust the Omanis to do this type of thing. And there have been question marks, I guess, about the position of Turkey within the Middle East at present. There are a lot of tensions between Turkey and Iran historically. And so perhaps Iran just is looking to secure the best possible location, the best possible conditions for talks. And it knows that Oman is a good neighbor. It has played a prominent role in having these dialogues in the past. And given the broader structural pressures that are on Iran right now, it's trying to seek any type of advantage possible, I guess.
Yes. Judging from what you've been saying, Simon, the prospects of any sort of positive outcome from these talks do appear very, very bleak. How far would this then push the US president with that buildup of in the Gulf, given that he's already struck nuclear targets in Iran last year?
Well, this is the worry that these types of buildups, these escalations, they push you into a sort of path dependency, a course of action that is only going to lead in one direction. And that's the anxiety that many of us that have been working in Middle Eastern politics and international relations more broadly are worried about, that when you see this buildup and this continued buildup, this ratcheting of tensions, the reduction of space for proper dialogue and talks, it really does point to a worrying trajectory. But the one saving grace, I think, is that there are a lot of states in the region that have the ear of Washington, that have the ear of Donald Trump, who do not want a conflict, who have been adamant that an escalation and a military confrontation with Iran is not in the best interests of the region. And so I think there's going to be a lot of phone calls being made from Riyadh, from Abu Dhabi, from Doha, from various other places to Washington to say, please get a handle on this. Do not let this escalate further.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the role of countries in the Gulf: Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. They've had to do this before. What does this kind of tell us about the relationship in general between these Gulf states and the US?
Well, it's a bit of a complex one. In recent years, there have been serious question marks about the extent to which the Gulf states can rely on Washington as a key ally, as a security guarantor. We saw that the Iranians hit Doha. They hit the US air base. We saw the Israelis hitting Doha, trying to strike Hamas targets. And this is a major US ally. It is now a major non-NATO ally. So that, I think, raises a lot of questions for the Gulf states about the extent to which they can rely on Washington. They can rely on the United States for their protection, which is a real gear shift in terms of how they had constructed their security from the past, 80 years or so, I guess. And so I think what we're seeing is a real shift in the Gulf states themselves thinking we need to find a way of doing security ourselves. We saw that with the Saudi and the Iranian rapprochement of 2023. We're seeing more pragmatic turns within the Gulf. And I think that's why we're starting to see all these calls, why we're starting to see all this pressure from Gulf leaders to say, we do not want an escalation. We do not want to see you strike Iran.
Okay, all eyes then on Oman tomorrow. Professor Simon Mabon, always appreciate your analysis on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.